Most agent memory is fake. It's either prompt history or a simple database lookup with just a fancy name. I will show you what real agent memory looks like using OpenAI Agents SDK together with Mem0. But you can use this for every other framework as well. And believe me, the difference you're going to make with good memory is between a simple gimmick and a real full-blown production-ready AI agent. So in this video, I'm going to showcase a real project that I actually built for a client of mine. I changed it a bit according to my contract, but I'm going to make sure that you can see what an actual AI agent looks like in production. So in just a few minutes, I'm going to show you how you can integrate agent memory into your existing workflow. So we'll shortly go through the basics of Mem0, then I'm going to explain what kind of AI agent we are going to build, and then we are going to do the actual building. So look up Mem0 and you will have Mem0, the memory layer for your AI apps. We can click on Get Started, you can make an account. Once we have an account, we can go to Get Started. If you are used to building things in Python, then this is super easy. So you need to install Mem0 AI, then you'll have your API key. Then you can very simply just import Mem0. You can import a memory client, you can create a client. So you'll have your messages, and the only thing that you're going to add is client.add your messages and your user ID, because memory is user specific. So everything in Mem0 is based on the user ID that you give it. Then we have a query, for example, what can I cook for dinner tonight? And we said here, hey, I'm Alex, I'm a vegetarian and I'm allergic to nuts. Then when we do client.search and then we give it the query and the user ID, it is going to get the history of Alex and it is going to prepare a meal, and it is going to give us a meal without nuts and vegetarian. So that's basically in a nutshell how Mem0 is working. I think it's super simple, but now let's go to what we are actually going to build. This is a project that I actually use for a client of mine. Like I said, I changed it a bit according to my client contract, but basically the whole flow is the same. Now let me explain you what kind of AI agent we are actually going to build. Then I have a flowchart explaining the exact flow, the exact infrastructure behind it. But let me just explain to you what we are going to build. We have an AI agent that is a Healthcare Admin Navigator. Basically someone behind the desk picking up the phone, answering emails, and giving answers to different questions about procedures. There are people who have been waiting for blood tests, things like that. So a lot of things that we actually need history for. So we are going to make an AI agent that is a Healthcare Admin Navigator. And this is a long word, but it's basically someone who remembers everything about the clients of this healthcare center. So we can get phone calls of people who are asking for their blood test results. We can have emails for people saying, hey, how long do I still need to wait for my result from my test? Or people who are saying, I want my appointment to be rescheduled. So it's a lot of personal information. And how cool would it be when we have one person sitting there and every call she takes, she knows exactly what the answer is to the question. So really cool. I think something that is actually going to be used. So we remember users across sessions via Mem0. And we have our hashed user ID for privacy. We obviously don't want all the names of our very sensitive data in there. And it writes memory on every input and output. And it tracks claims, prior authorization, reference numbers, and call summaries in structured form. So this is super nice. It does a lot for us. It calculates appeal deadlines, it generates call scripts for appeal letters, templates to move tasks forwards. It maintains a running timeline of next steps and follow-up dates. So it basically does everything a real person would. We also have a guardrail that scans for responses that actually have something to do with the actual medical stuff. We obviously don't want to give medical advice to persons. So if data is missing, it actually knows what to do in that case. And we can export or delete all stored memories on request to meet privacy requirements. So this is a lot. This is actually something that a client could ask you to build. And this is something realistic. So let me go to the flowchart, and this is a pretty large flowchart, but I'm going to make it simple for you. So we have our user request. So this is just a normal question. We get maybe the phone number of a user or the email of a user, and we want to answer to that question, obviously. So we are going to hash the user ID according to our privacy guidelines. Then we're going to save the message. So we get a message, we hash the patient ID, and then we directly save the message. Because if something goes wrong, we want to make sure that we have saved the message. So then we have a decision to make. Does this message include claim or call details? If one of those is the case, we want to store the details. So save claim details, save call details. If not, we're going to recall the history for this user. So we have the hash of the patient ID, and we're going to use this to get history on this person. So we can have users that have a lot of different conversations. So we're going to get all memories for this user. We are going to use get all, and if we found our answer already in there, then we can build our context from our history. If not, we are going to use a query to search for the correct results. So if we have a lot of memory on a specific person, then we are going to use search. So we are going to build context from the history, and then we are going to start running our agent. So basically this whole flow is even before the start of the agent. Then we are going to decide, do we need a tool? If so, we have different tools. We have check claim status, generate appeal letter, calculate appeal deadline, or generate call script. With that, we are going to create an answer. When we have an answer, we are going to use a guardrail. This is going to check, are we giving any medical advice? Because this is not something we want. Then we're going to save the final answer. We are going to return the result, and we are going to store our answer. And that's it. So we have this flow, and as you can see here, it's not that hard, but now you know the infrastructure behind it. Let's actually start building it. Okay, so I have first created this very simple script that is going to explain Mem0. So we can import Mem0, and we are going to import the memory client from this. Then we need to give it the API key, or you can use memo API key as an environmental variable. So when we have our client, we can then start sending to our Mem0. So let me show you what is happening. Underneath the get started, we have our request. So what we can do here is I've created a free account again, and we have all our requests here. So I was doing some testing, and you can see here that we are either adding data or searching for data or getting all the data. So this is pretty simple. So we see here when we add something or when we are updating something, and you can click on, for example, here we have our ID, so our patient ID. We can click on it, and we have a lot of data on what is happening with this user. So we are adding additional documents. We are adding that she spoke with a representative. We are giving our professional details. We are adding some follow-ups that happened. We said someone called. So this is basically a whole user profile in our Mem0. And this is absolutely amazing because we can do requests to this database. So we have our different patients here. We can go to memories, and this is everything that is stored. If we go to requests, you can also look at the payload. So we can see here that we are having an ID. We have our entity, so basically our user ID. You should use version 2. We have our messages. So this is basically the user message. So I just submitted a claim to Blue Cross Blue Shield for my lumbar spine MRI. So this is the question, we are storing that, and we are having some memory actions. But currently there were no changes because I was testing, and if it's already there, it's not going to add it as well. So now that you know the front end of Mem0, let's actually just start talking with it in our Python. So this is a short function to get a hashed user key. We can just use mem.add. We can add the messages that we are getting. So for example, this is a message, or an output of an agent can be a message. So everything that we want to store is something we can give as a message. So this is happening when we are just getting the question. So a question comes in and we are directly writing it to Mem0. We can also write an output. So obviously when we have an assistant text, so an answer, we are writing that to the database as well. And we can also write facts. And facts is something that Mem0 recognizes as something that is true always. So basically just literally a fact in your head. We can obviously also recall our memory. So we can get all our memory. We can search for a specific query, and we can also recall all. So I think this is pretty simple. It's basically how a human works. We can store things, even though we do not do that necessarily on an active way. Maybe when we are learning for a test or something, but obviously we are also storing things and we are recalling things. So this is a super intuitive way of actually working with memory for an agent. So I have some examples. So we can write an input. We are just giving it the raw user ID. With the input, we can write a fact. So she spoke with Jennifer, reference is this, and we have a follow-up on Friday. So this is a fact, and we can recall that fact later. So I think let's just go to the AI agent. I think that is more fun. So this is our AI agent, and it's a pretty large file and also a lot of prompt engineering and stuff like that. So let's focus on the actual memory stuff. So we are initializing our memory client. We are having our healthcare config. So this is basically for the agent that it understands who it is, who it's working for, what it has to do, and some data like the lab or an office visit, what you need to do there. We have supported tasks. So this is just a configuration. And then we having our data models. And this is a huge change for agent development, because with all these data classes, we can actually create systems that we can count on, because we know that the output is going to be like these data classes. We are having our healthcare context where we are saving a session ID, a patient ID. We have a conversation history. We have current tasks, active claims. We have a lot of things here. Let me just go through the agent. So we have a deadline class. We have how should the agent output. We can track claims, we have some authorizations, we have some provider info. Okay, we also have some personal information security built in. We need to know for sure that we are not using personal data and writing that to an external database like Mem0. So this is built in as well. This makes it something that can actually be used, because obviously if you are building AI solutions for medical businesses, you are going to be having a lot of issues with security and making sure that a leak cannot happen. So let's now actually start looking at our healthcare memory agent. We have a store claim, and that is basically just a function built around the simpler version of this function. And as you can see here, it's not a lot of code. It's very simple. If you do this a few times, you can, within 5 minutes, understand how to do this and then implement it into all your projects and make your agents 2 times as good. At least. So we store authorization, we store the call summary. So we do that as well. We having our patient history that we can recall. We are storing interactions. So if we have an answer for them, we're going to store that as well. We can export our patient data so that it knows what kind of data we have on a patient. And we can also delete patient data if someone asks, hey, I don't like this, please delete it. So we create an instance of our healthcare memory manager, and we now have those admin tools. And those admin tools are basically just like someone who works at the healthcare center, and he or she has all these different tools that she can use. For example, check the status of a claim. So in production, and not for a demo for YouTube, this is connected to an external API, but we can just have all these functions laid out for the agent to choose. So we can check the claim status, we can generate an appeal letter, we can calculate appeal deadline, we can generate a call script. So we have a lot of different tools. We are going to register them here. And then the last thing we are going to make is our guardrail agent, because as someone sitting behind the server's desk, we don't want to give medical advice, because this person or this AI is not good enough for giving actual medical advice. So we have our guardrail where we can say the agent should only handle administrative tasks like insurance claims and appeals, prior authorizations, appointment scheduling, reference numbers, and call documentation. So flag if the response contains treatment recommendations, medical advice, suggestions, clinical decisions, or health recommendations, because that is just not something we want. And if we are going to use agents in development, we should have a guardrail. So we create the guardrail here, and now we can finally start with our actual agent. And this is something I think a lot of people already understand. And this is something I think is not the most interesting here. Everyone can write a prompt. Obviously, you have techniques to fine tune, but for now, let's just very quickly go through it. We give some capabilities. We have some memory entities you can track. We have administrative information. We can check the status of a claim. We can do all these things. We have some communication style, data protection requirements, and yeah, that's it. For now, this is fine. And now we have a function, and as you can see here, we have a very large Python file, but if we split it up into parts, so we first have our data models, then we have our memory handler, then we have our guardrail, then we have our tools, and like this, you just have parts that you need to complete. And if you have one AI agent file that works, and you exactly know how it works, you can very quickly change it into something for a different client, for example. So we just have this function where we first hash the patient ID, then we store the interaction. So we save the message. And as you can see here, we directly store the interaction. And that is something that I mentioned here as well. So we save the message. For demo purposes, obviously this function is filled in with dummy data, but we check if we are having a claim that we should save, or do we need to store a call summary. But then we can start with recall patient history. So we give the patient ID and we give the task type. And this is all stored into Mem0, and we can just get this context on this patient. So we have this patient history and we store it in our health context. So when we go here, we have our data model. So we now create context, and this context is something that the agent carries with it throughout the whole run. So if we look at our healthcare context, we can see here that we have this data class that I just explained to you that stores everything we need to know. So we also have the conversation history here. And this is basically everything that you should know, because we have now gotten our history and we can start giving it to the large language model so that it understands for who it needs to answer. So with this history, we are also giving it to the prompt. So we give it a task type, and we then run our AI agent. And I will not go in depth on how our AI agent exactly runs, because this is not the goal of the video. I want to explain how you can very simply add history, add memory to your agent. So we have our testing function. So let me just test it out. I first have this test patient ID where we have a scenario. So we say I just submitted a claim to Blue Cross Blue Shield for my lumbar spine. Okay, so we have this, and I already ran this, so you can remember this from what we saw in Mem0. Because if we now go to Mem0, you can see here that when we go to memories, so in this memory, it already has all the data on our test person. So if we now delete all of this, yes, let's start clean here. Okay, so we have no memories. If we now go back to our code, we are asking this, and this is a very realistic question, and we are going to have an answer on this. Let's also give the response of this one there. So we are first asking something, then we do a follow-up call. So we also store this. So there's the first call, there's the second call, and then we are asking what was the reference number from my first call about the MRI claim, and who did I speak with. So we now ask something about the first call, and it should understand it, and it should get the correct memories to answer the question. So let's run it and see what it comes up with. So scenario one, we are now just expecting a answer to a question. So we are now checking for any history for our hashed user. So the claim for your lumbar spine MRI is currently in the processing stage. Here's what you can do next. Okay, so we cut it off for here just so that we have this clear view of what is actually happening behind the scenes. But this answer seems to be fine. So this was day one. We are now doing another call on day 10. So we are once again searching for our patient, and obviously it's the same as that we have just sorted for. And it will now check, okay, do we need to know something that has already been said in a earlier conversation to answer the following up question? Okay, so we get a response, immediate action required. So it was the message, I called BCBS today about my MRI claim, spoke with Jennifer. She said the claim is still processing, but there's a question about medical necessity. She gave me a reference. So it's a pretty technical question. And we now say, okay, based on the first call that you gave us, now the second call, you need to have some action. Okay, and we now get our last answer. So we say, what was the reference number from my last call about the MRI claim? And who did I speak with? So this can also be something like, okay, we have this medical center and it wants to allow people to ask questions to an AI about their earlier conversations. Then this is some question that would absolutely make sense. So the reference number from your last call about the MRI claim is, okay, the number you spoke with Jennifer, whose representative ID is Jen. Okay, perfect. So we now have our memory. If we now go back to Mem0, we refresh. Boom, we have memories, and it can now answer all the questions for this user. So really, I thought adding memory to your AI agent would have been way harder. And it's actually pretty easy if you understand how it works. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe because this helps me and my content reach more people. So see you in the next one.